Welcome back to another episode of Cape Ann Today. I am with Kim Smith. Kim Smith is got to do it already.
That's me doing a voiceover for my film.
Those I have to do many times.
Right, right. Many, many times.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, here we go. Welcome back to another episode of Cape Ann Today. I am with Kim Smith. Kim Smith is an award-winning documentary filmmaker, environmental conservationist, photojournalist, author, illustrator, and an award-winning landscape designer. Her most recent feature-length documentary, Beauty on the Wing, Life Story of the Monarch Butterfly, has won many awards. She has also for years been a leading ambassador for the Piping Plovers on Good Harbor Beach. Hi, Kim. How are you?
Hi, Heather. It's nice to see you on this beautiful May day here.
It's such a beautiful May day. And you just said to me that the migration in May is spectacular. So tell us what you mean by that.
Well, so I like to say May is the magical month for migration in Massachusetts because especially we who are fortunate enough to observe it along the coastline. So everywhere you go, whether it's Cox Reservation or Eastern Point or any of our, or even in your own backyard, you'll see you'll see a huge variety of warblers. Some are beginning to nest, some are passing through. You'll see along the coastline. The other day, I just filmed a really cool shot of, because I've always wanted to see lesser yellowlegs and greater yellowlegs side by side to help people figure out which is which. And
What are yellow legs? What are your
yellowlegs are a type of long-legged shorebird. And so that was very exciting to get the two side by side, because even experts get confused about which is which. So, and there's not very many side by side comparisons out there. And then a really amazing thing happened a couple days ago, and I think I had a magnificent, mesmerizing face-to-face encounter with a fisher cat. And I think the fisher cat was looking for birds. They eat birds. So it was, systematically climbing up and down trees, poking its head in the little hole. And I don't know if we'd see that. He was so bold about it, and he knew he could see me there, but he continued on his way. He was really interested in finding either eggs or nests, I'm not sure. But anyways, I've been reading a lot about fisher cats, and they're really the most misunderstood creature that you can imagine. So
why? Tell us a little bit about that.
well, so if you like, everybody always says, oh, that ungodly scream that they make? Well, that has proven time and time again to be a red fox making that scream. And we've heard that we know red fox do it, but fisher cats do more of a little grunt and, kind of groaning noises. They don't shriek like that. And first of all, their name is the dumbest name imaginable because they don't hunt for fish, and they are not a member of the cat family. They're a member of the weasel family. So they're our second largest member of the weasel family, next to otters. So so it goes otters, then the next one down is the fisher cat, and I'm pretty sure the one that I saw was a male, because he was really, really big. I mean, this big.
How did you know he was not an otter? Maybe otters don't go up trees.
Yeah, I've never heard of an otter going up a tree, and he was super furry, and he
Uh,
had a really cute face, like a little bear, almost like one of my granddaughter's stuffed animal bear faces.
See, that's what I had understood, and I have come face to face with a fisher cat in the woods. I thought that little face was pretty ferocious looking.
No,
Not
they,
quite, but
they do have big teeth and powerful jaws, but they're pretty afraid of humans, and typically they'll just run away from a person.
okay.
They One thing that they're really well known for is they can eat porcupines, and so they were almost they were extirpated from Massachusetts. And then as people, and then in the late 1800s, beginning half of the 1900s, as people began to abandon their farms and forests began to regrow, then the fisher cats moved back in. Plus, it was helped along by the logging industry because so porcupines eat tree saplings, and they'll eat every tree sapling in sight. And the fisher cats help control the porcupine population. So all this I've learned recently after my mesmerizing face-to-face encounter with the fisher cat. It was really
Yes, well, so do we have to worry about them grabbing our yard cats?
no,
No.
no, and because they've done mirrored tests on their when they get killed but on the side of the road or whatever, and they have never found cat remains in their stomach. So if your cat goes missing due to a predator, it's more than likely a coyote. That's the basic scientific data that's out there now. So, and also somebody said to me, oh, well, they came in and they took out my chicken coop. So that also makes me think that it's a fox, because a fox is the only animal that caches its food. So it will catch a lot, it will, grab a lot of chickens and then store it. So, and yeah, and fisher cats don't do that. So
Oh, that's so interesting.
yeah, so I'm trying. So now I'm on a mission to change the bad rap that the fisher cat.
Start right here.
Right, and when you see this really beautiful footage that I got, you'll see why. Because he's actually, if you saw his little face in, you were watching a movie, a nature film in about creatures in Africa, you'd think he was really, really cute. So,
Okay. So we are definitely going to campaign on behalf of the fisher cats.
the fisher cat. And also the Native American Cree name is Otchok. And I thought, oh, that's so much better, because ot would make people think of otter, right? And it just sounds so much more like it is.
Oh,
rather
exactly.
than right. So we have to work on changing the name.
Yeah, Otchok. Okay, that's I'm on it. I'm on it. Well, Kim, I'd love for you to tell us about how the piping plovers are doing on Good Harbor Beach. But first, tell us what is a piping plover and why we care so much about them.
Okay, so a piping plover is a tiny nesting shorebird. It's about the size of a sparrow, and there are only about 8,000 pairs in the whole worldwide. They only nest in North America. Other areas have, like on the West Coast, their counterpart is the snowy plover, and they are in even more trouble. But there's only about 8,000 pairs, and so in our area they're considered threatened, and in the Great Lakes area they're considered endangered. So, but it doesn't matter which category they come under, whether threatened or endangered, they both enjoy the same protections. So anyway, so every year in March, these tiny little shorebirds start migrating, and our pair at Good Harbor Beach has been arriving every year about the third to fourth week in March. And they nest right on the beach. They don't nest in the dunes. There's probably too many predators in the dunes. That's probably why they don't nest there. And for centuries, it was safe for them to nest on the beach. The beaches weren't used so heavily in the historically as a place to recreate as they are now. There started to be problems with the population in the late 1800s from over collecting the eggs, because people used to eat the eggs. And fortunately, because of the Migratory Bird Treaty Act from 1918 and other movements like that, now they are protected. the population started to increase. But then when people in the 1950s, after World War II, people started to use a lot of off-road vehicles on the beaches, and that was a huge, that really, did them in. So now we know where they're nesting, and in those areas where they're nesting, the off-road vehicles are not permitted. So, and one thing, Massachusetts is at the fore of the piping plover recovery. So I think we should, as a state, we should be very proud of ourselves for that, because every uh, district or state and conservation agency from North Carolina to Newfoundland has piping plover programs and have been working to protect the piping plover. So there's it's a huge movement, and it is having a very positive outcome, especially in Massachusetts. So we're doing a lot of good things. We're doing a lot of things right in Massachusetts.
Well, I want to get to what those things are, but first, can you tell me, where are the plovers migrating from? Where do they go after they nest?
Okay, so after they nest, we know this from banding programs from the University of Rhode Island. Most of our plovers go on to Cape Hatteras and Cape Lookout National Seashore Beaches, and they stay there for about 30 days, and they grow some new feathers in. When you see them at the end of the summer, their feathers are very worn out. And so they grow in some new feathers, and then they continue on to the Bahamas, to the Turks and Caicos. Mostly that's what our birds do. Some go on to Georgia and down to Florida, and some winter over on the Gulf Coast. But mostly our birds are found during the winter months in the Bahamas. So.
And are they coming north to nest because there's a food source here?
Yes, because because of our nice cold waters, there's an abundance of, when you see them forage at the beach, they just are constantly pecking at the sand, pulling up giant worms, mini mollusks. It's very funny to watch, actually. But it's especially since I've been filming in 4K slow motion, 120 frames per second, you can really see what's happening. And it's amazing, because they run on the beach, and sometimes they tamp their foot, and then they'll run like 2 more feet and peck at the soil and always come up with something. So they're tamping to hear and feel the vibrations in the soil to see where the next little available prey is. So yeah, so we on our barrier beaches especially, we have just a wonderful food source for them. It's really great foraging in this area. And that's one thing, like if plovers aren't allowed to access their food source, or it's difficult, the chicks will grow much more slowly. It'll take them much longer to fledge, and they're at much greater risk when they don't have access to good foraging areas.
Well, is there any conversation in the recovery community about climate change and about the water getting warmer here?
Yeah.
Plovers need to go farther. Maybe?
Well, there's a number of things that are going to impact the plovers, and have to a degree already. So because of climate change, the very, very severe storms damages their habitat. Now, in some cases, plovers like, really roughed up and changing habitat, and but in other cases, it's been very detrimental, particularly in places like New Jersey, when they had that massive, I can't think of the name of that massive hurricane, but the one that, was in New York City, because my daughter was there living in New York City. But yes, yeah. And it just really wreaked havoc with shorebird nesting areas. So that's these very, very dramatic, severe storms is one problem. We don't know how it will affect their foraging and their food source. They, perhaps they'll end up going further north like lobsters are doing. And then another issue that is, so where all the wind farms are scheduled to be built, all the wind turbines in the off the coast of Massachusetts wind farm area is right in the direct route of the plovers migration. So there's a group of scientists from the University of Rhode Island who are trying to figure out how high up they fly, if they fly above the wind turbines, because they fly pretty directly. Like they'll go from, we know it can take as few as 5 days to get from Georgia to Good Harbor Beach, because one plover that landed on our beach was banded in Georgia, had been seen in Georgia. 5 days later was at Good Harbor Beach. So it's a pretty direct flight that they're doing over water. So we don't know how the wind turbines are going to impact them, but I don't know. It's so hard to know what to do and what's right. And
Right.
whether it's free, it seems like the wind turbines seem to be impacting whales as well. So, but we don't have data, about that 100% certain about what's going on with that. So
It is complicated.
it's complicated.
But tell us what you, and I understand Mass Audubon is now taking over the project, the Piping Plover, or the
Yeah.
Shorebird
Yeah. So they were hired by the city, I think in February, and excuse me one second. Fogging up here. They were hired by the city in February, and so we've met everybody, Lyra Brennan and the wonderful staff at Mass Audubon. I've met a number of the field agents at the beach, and so we're sharing the monitoring. Like we're there every day once the chicks hatch. We're there in the mornings, and we're all constantly checking on them anyways, and people are there pretty much all the time. And then Mass Audubon will be there during the middle of the day, and then we are there in the evening. So yeah. So
when you say are you a total volunteer organization?
yes. Yeah. Yeah. So it's myself, and then we have just a wonderful crew of there's Jonathan and Sally Golding, Deborah Brown, Jill Ortiz. I just can't, there's so many people I can't name, Jenny Mayer. There's just a lot of us who've been doing it for a number of years, since 2016. And we originally worked with the city when Ken Whitaker was the conservation agent, but then there was less interest in the volunteers after Ken Whitaker left. And so now, and so then we've been doing it, working closely with the DPW. They're awesome. They're always helping us with issues at the beach. And then, and now we're working with Mass Audubon. So we've joined forces. So it's a different year. It's a learning curve for everybody, because Mass Audubon has very different protocols. Like we were all about like sharing, because we would think, oh, if people know where the birds are, then they would be more aware. They would be more aware of them, and also they're so cute, like some of our ambassadors would share binoculars with the beachgoers, not of the chicks, but of the adults, and just let them know there's plovers there. If when you're walking down the beach, if you could just stay to the right or whatever. But Mass Audubon is more, they like to keep information like that held close to the vest, because they've seen how some folks can be very, I don't know how to put this. Some folks can be, harass the plovers and not treat them well. So, they have a great deal of experience at many, many beaches in Massachusetts. I believe, I can't don't quote me on this exactly, but I believe that they manage about 30% of the piping plover population in Massachusetts. So
So they're not on every beach, and this kind of protection isn't happening, I'm sure, on every beach, but a lot of beaches in Massachusetts.
yeah, so for example, on at Good Harbor Beach, there's the volunteers and Mass Audubon now, and they do this. They work with other volunteer groups, like down at Duxbury. They have a great volunteer group down there in Duxbury as well, and but then some beaches it's just them, and then I've met a lot of the people because I've always been very interested to see how other urban beaches manage their plover populations. I have been uh, visiting and talking to people at the DCR beaches, the Department of Conservation and Recreation for Massachusetts beaches, which includes Winthrop and Nahant and places like that. And it's very inspiring to meet these they're primarily young biologists out on the beach, and they're so dedicated and they love the birds and they're so caring and so interested in their well-being, and it's just very inspiring to meet them and to talk to them and work with them. And I've really learned so much from all these great organizations. I think you know that I'm working on a film about the plover, so and that is I haven't I have to begin a fundraiser soon. I'm kind of behind on that, but I did receive a grant from the Massachusetts Department of Fisheries and Wildlife to get started. So I'm very excited about that. And I have a trailer up as well.
Oh,
And yeah, it's called The Piping Plovers of Moonlight Bay. And I'm calling it that because in case in case the film is popular, I don't want to say the Piping Plovers of Good Harbor Beach, because I don't want I don't want plover fans to come and harass them. So or just be too overly interested in them, I should say. And then that was filmed at a number of beaches, but primarily it's Good Harbor Beach is the background for several different plover families. So
we will put a link to that in our notes.
okay, yeah, yeah. I haven't really because it's how you can the trailer is not quite finished yet. I'm waiting to do a few more scenes and shorten it, but on Vimeo you can put something up and then you can switch it out.
Right.
So
Okay.
yeah, so I'm going to it's a work in progress right now, but I'm hoping to release the film. I'm hoping to have a successful fundraiser this summer, and beginning very soon. I just have to finish planting all my butterfly gardens. And as soon as planting season is done, then I can go back to the focusing on the piping plover film. And that I'm hoping that will be out in the fall. So
Wonderful. Well, we'll talk to you then.
yeah.
I have two final questions for you. One
Okay.
is, I learned this with you, but I think many people don't know what the piping part is.
Oh, they're beautiful. I think it's beautiful.
I
Now,
do.
I read somebody shared something that Henry David Thoreau had written about the annoying the annoying piping of the plover, and I was like, "What?" So, no, I think it's very beautiful and melodic, and they have a wonderful communication system. They communicate with their mates constantly, and you don't always hear it. They communicate with the chicks, and they even communicate. The chicks, when they hatch, have heard the adults peeping and piping, and so that's one way they recognize their individual parents. But they're also, like, right now at this time of year, or it really basically just finished as they're settling down, but you can hear this beautiful haunting piping sound as they circle around and around, establishing their territory. So yeah, I think it's
Now,
melodically
it,
beautiful.
it is so beautiful. And
Yeah.
I've never heard anything in nature that sounds like that.
Yeah, yeah, the other plovers don't make that, that quite that. I mean, killdeers are called killdeers because they're a type of plover and they have that very shrill killdeer, killdeer, and it's not pretty at all. So, and they're very closely related. So, yeah, so the
It
piping plover has a very special vocalization, I think.
does. And so tell me how you got interested in piping plovers.
Well, it was kind of random. Um, I went, let's see, in 2016, I was at Good Harbor Beach and I was just there. I noticed that they had arrived. I didn't know anything about them at the time. And, but I started to read about them and I could see that they were really struggling to try to get established. They were trying to establish a nest on the beach and the dogs were running like all willy-nilly and they'd they'd start, after reading a little bit more about them and then I'd see that they were starting to nest and then disrupted, and this happened over and over again, and then finally they had a nest, but then the first nest, we lost all the chicks in the first nest that first year, and it was just crazy. And then I just started to learn more about what other communities were doing and how they protect their plovers. And but it was really just sort of a random thing. Oh, I'll just come down here. I'm working on another project. I'll get a little footage of the plovers, and then like everything I do, it just a little seed turns into a giant project.
Well, it certainly has, and you've done such great work with them.
Yeah.
Well, there have been protections on Good Harbor Beach before you came along for the plovers?
No, no, there wasn't. In 2016, dogs were allowed all pets were allowed on the beach through May 15th, I believe it was, or May 1st. I'm not sure what it was. And the most important thing that we worked together as a community. Many of us met with city councilors and the animal advisory committee, and we got in 2018, I believe it was, we got the rule change that the dogs were off the beach by April 1st. And then the other key thing was to get the area roped off prior to their arrival. Because, for example, they do that at DCR beaches by April 1st. The roping is all up, so the protected areas are already pre-established for the birds. Now they might go out of that, but at least they have some kind of a safety zone from human traffic and dogs mostly. So yeah. So like we always have an issue at Good Harbor Beach with enforcement at this time of year because are a lot of there's a lot of activity on warm days and people tromping through the nesting area to use the dunes to go to the bathroom, and then so we struggle with that part of the puzzle every year, and we're working on that. But other things that have taken place is the fines were increased for having dogs on the beach after April 1st. The dog officers are awesome. Our animal control officers, Tegan and Jamie, are awesome. They help. They just are tremendous help. They're there patrolling April 1st, and first they gently remind people, and even though we have, and then the other thing is getting big signs posted because people don't always go to the website. So we've made a lot of really, positive changes for the plovers, and it doesn't just benefit piping plovers.
Mm.
It benefits all the birds that are migrating, all the wildlife that's migrating through. The DPW loves not having to clean up dog poop one less month.
Right.
Um, we love that there's not so much dog poop going into the sand and into the, on the beaches. I mean, there's just a lot of things. Having more awareness and more interest in Good Harbor Beach makes it just a cleaner, safer, nicer place for everybody.
Hmm.
So, and if we could just get the enforcement about littering going, that would be a big help, because littering is one of the major problems, not just because it attracts crows and gulls that eat plovers, but when I go down there on a weekend morning and the DPW hasn't gotten there yet, there's trash from one end of the beach to the other, and the DPW cleans it up. But by the time they get there, even though it's 6:30 in the morning, all night long, it's blown into the marsh, blown into the water, blown into the creek, blown into the dunes. It's just really, it's gross. And we think it's mostly people come from out of town who don't want to pick up their garbage.
Mhm.
I don't think it's, I really don't, because there's so many people who live in the area who constantly, every morning they walk the beach and they clean up trash.
Mhm.
I do too, but I have to put my camera down. I have to find a place to put my camera down to clean up, because I've tried cleaning up trash while I'm carrying cameras and sand gets in the cameras and I ruin my
Yeah.
$2,000 lens. So, so I don't do that so much anymore. But all of the ambassadors, we often just bring garbage bags down with us, and uh, you know, try to do our part in helping to keep the beach clean. But the DPW does an amazing job. It's not, that isn't the issue. The issue is people leaving trash on the beach.
Yeah. And it having lots of time to be distributed by the winds.
Right,
Right.
exactly. And it goes in the water, it goes, gets carried into the water and the tide. You see it, like you see along the rack line, every level of degraded plastic. And it's just heartbreaking,
Yeah.
from the teeny tiniest microplastics, even I'm sure there's a million billion more that we're not even seeing,
Right.
to, single-use plastic bags, to Dunkin' Donuts. I mean, it's just like, it's just everything. So, yeah.
Well, we'll get this message out there too. Stop littering.
Stop littering. Right.
Do you remember, I say this to people, do you remember in kindergarten for us, like the worst thing you could possibly do was litter?
Yes, yeah, and they would have those commercials on, oh, one thing I saw on, Mad Men one time was that the whole family went out on a picnic, right? This is supposed to be like the early '60s,
Yeah.
and they went out on a picnic, and then, at the end of the picnic, they just dumped their garbage out, because that was so authentic, because that's what people did in the early '60s.
Yeah.
They just, like, threw their trash out the window, or,
Yeah.
whatever, anyway. Yeah, so
Hopefully we're not back there. We need,
no, but kids, I see people pull up on Nautilus Road and empty their ashtrays, right, just right there on the sidewalk. Just empty their ashtrays, empty their, snack bag, whatever. So, yeah.
we're on it. We're going to save the Fisher Cat. We're going to rebrand the Fisher Cat to be
That
Oshkosh. Is that what
art chalk.
I got it?
And I think that's how you pronounce it. It's Cree, so I'm not really sure, but it
And
looks like
we're
it.
going to bring back the littering shame.
Yeah. Yes. I have several friends have said to me, because I asked them, how do you deal with it on your North Carolina beaches or your New Jersey beaches? And they have officers come down to the beach and ticket people who are littering. And they're not cheap tickets. They're like $250. And so then everybody's good for a little while and everybody remembers, and then they send a police officer down again when people start forgetting and the litter starts building up again. So I mean, just proactive things like that would help with the littering so much. So much. And
It's
I do want to say there's so many great organizations that help do periodic cleanups on the beach and things like that, but a lot gets into the environment before these actions take place. So
right. All right. Thank you so much, Kim Smith, for so much information. Really, it was a great talk.
yeah, yeah, I really got talking there too.
No, it was really good. And
Okay, thank you, Heather. Thank you for your continued interest in the plovers. I really, really, really appreciate it. We all really appreciate it.
oh, well, it's really hard to be interested in those little guys.
Let me know when you put the link up and I'll share it with everybody.
Okay, great.
All right.
Great.
Okay.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Heather.
Interested in a sponsorship? Email sponsor@1623studios.org to learn more.